Gerald Shenk, 45, tall, dark-haired, with an intense yet approachable gaze. He was the kind of man you couldn't help but listen to. His voice carried the weight of authority, yet it sang with a gentle enthusiasm that touched the deepest chords of one's soul. As we unravel his enigmatic narrative, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to keep up with this gripping saga and more. Your engagement lights the way for these hidden stories to be unveiled. The very air around Jason seemed to thrum with purpose. But beneath that charismatic exterior, behind those passionate speeches and pleading eyes, lurked secrets and intentions that the town of Dublin could have never imagined. In 2010, Jason Shenk was a different man. He lived a quieter life, often blending into the background. One evening, while scrolling through a news article on his computer, he stumbled upon a piece detailing the immense demand for Bibles in China. The article spoke of the lengths people went to get their hands on the Christian literature. This revelation struck a chord in Shenk's mind. He pondered over the information and realized the golden opportunity that lay in front of him. If people were so eager for Bibles, wouldn't they be equally eager to donate to the cause? So, Shenk got to work. He began crafting a heartwarming story about a foundation dedicated to providing Bibles to those in need in China. The story was complete with touching anecdotes of desperate families and individuals yearning for the teachings of the Bible. Soon, with his gift for storytelling, he had created a foundation that, to anyone who heard of it, seemed like a lighthouse of hope. As the days turned into weeks, Shenk's foundation took shape. From an office in Dublin to a website and brochures, everything seemed legitimate. With his foundation set up, Shenk felt like it was time to reach out directly to the hearts of believers. Packing a bag with brochures and props, he began his journey across Ohio and North Carolina. He visited small-town churches, community centers, and even larger religious gatherings. At each location, he introduced himself as a dedicated missionary recently returning from China. With a somber expression and a heavy heart, he would recount tales of Chinese Christians he'd met, like a young girl who'd never seen the Bible, or the elderly man who whispered prayers in secret for fear of being caught. His stories, so filled with emotion and sincerity, were difficult to resist. People were moved by the plight of these far-off believers and inspired by Shenk's supposed dedication. They saw him as a man with a mission, a bridge connecting two worlds, and they wanted to help. After each speech, Shenk would humbly ask for donations, emphasizing the difference each dollar would make. Many, touched by his words, would open their wallets, and before long, he had amassed a sizable sum from both charity groups and individual donors. With the money pouring in, Shenk had to be smart about where it went. Instead of sending the funds directly to China as promised, he set up multiple bank accounts. Some were right there in Georgia, others in far-off places like Singapore and Hong Kong. Shenk began living a life many could only dream of. He bought shiny diamonds that sparkled brightly on his fingers and around his neck. Late at night, he'd sit in front of his computer, getting a thrill from gambling online, sometimes winning big, losing, but always coming back for more. And then there were the life insurance policies. He didn't just buy one or two, but many, each under different names, ensuring his future was secure. Yet, whenever he stepped out into the public eye, none of this extravagance was visible. He continued to play the part of the humble missionary dedicated to helping Chinese Christians. He wore simple clothes and spoke about the struggles of his mission, all while keeping his lavish lifestyle a secret. To the world, he was a hero, but behind closed doors, Shenk was living a life built on lies and deceit. In Dublin, murmurs of concern began to permeate the community. A good number of donors who had generously contributed to Shenk's foundation started to express their curiosity and concern regarding the absence of updates or photographs of the Bibles being distributed in China. Anticipating heartwarming tales and expressions of gratitude from Chinese families, they were instead met with an unsettling silence. Miles away in North Carolina, a young journalist named Lucy was sipping her morning coffee when an anonymous tip landed on her desk. It hinted at something amiss with a foundation sending Bibles to China. Intrigued, Lucy decided to look into it. As she dug deeper, the pieces started to come together. She discovered there were no records of shipments, no photographs of grateful recipients, and nothing that showed the foundation's work in action. Meanwhile, Shenk's spending habits had started to turn heads. banks began noticing large purchases, luxuries, travels, and even investments. While Shenk continued his passionate speeches and heartwarming tales behind the scenes, the net slowly tightened around him. Lucy looked more into the foundation's work and met Tom Williams, who used to work with Shenk, helping with money and planning events. At first, Tom liked Shenk's mission but got worried when he saw money problems and secrets in how things were run. Feeling bad about the lies he saw, he chose to help Lucy by giving her important inside info to show Shenk's lies. With Tom's help, Lucy pieced together the jigsaw of Shenk's scheme. Receipts, bank transactions, and testimonies painted a picture that was hard to ignore. The story was no longer just a hunch or a rumor. It was backed by hard evidence. Lucy's findings quickly reached the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of Georgia. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, they decided to step in. They began building a case against Shenk, ensuring every piece of evidence was scrutinized and verified. All the while, Shenk sensed the change in the wind. He noticed familiar faces in the town now looked at him with doubt and suspicion. One evening, as he sipped his drink, a news segment about the investigation caught his eye. Panic set in. Realizing he was running out of time, Shenk decided it was time to vanish. As the town of Dublin slept, he escaped, hoping to disappear before the law could catch up. But the chase had only just begun. As dawn broke in Dublin, the town was abuzz with the news of Shenk's sudden disappearance. Posters with his face were soon plastered everywhere, and news channels covered the story, urging viewers to report any sightings. Using the money he had taken from the unsuspecting donors, Shenk tried to stay one step ahead of the law. He moved from one country to another, leaving behind a trail of hotel rooms, hired cars, and hurried departures. All the while, he enjoyed the luxury the stolen money brought him. He renounced his U.S. citizenship in 2016, and the Justice Department says warrants have been issued for his arrest, according to the indictment and prosecutors. Shenk has been indicted on 4 counts of wire fraud and 37 counts of money laundering, the U.S. Attorney's Office said. There is no attorney for him listed in online records. Prosecutors said he is being sought internationally. But, as the saying goes, old habits die hard. While in the lavish European city of Geneva, Shenk couldn't resist purchasing a rare diamond that caught his eye in a jeweler's window. This diamond wasn't just any gem. It was one of a kind, making headlines in luxury circles. When the purchase news reached the authorities, they quickly connected the dots. The once elusive Shenk had inadvertently given away his location. With this lead, the authorities closed in, and the net around Shenk began to tighten again. But he managed to slip away once more. News of Shenk's extravagant purchase and near apprehension spread like wildfire. Every TV channel, newspaper, and radio station had his face splashed across it, recounting the tale of the charismatic man who had fooled so many and yet managed to remain a step ahead of the authorities. The gavel in the courtroom where he was to be tried remained silent, awaiting a defendant who was nowhere to be found. The donors who felt betrayed, especially those from Dublin, were left grappling with a blend of anger, disbelief, and loss. Shenk's charges, however, were clear. Several counts of wire fraud, money laundering, and further financial crimes as detailed by U.S. Attorney Jill E. Steinberg. If and when arrested and convicted, he could face up to 20 years in jail, lose his properties, and pay hefty fines. The charges stemmed from claims that Shenk tricked people, mainly from Ohio and North Carolina, into donating over $30 million. The funds, instead of aiding religious efforts, are said to have been diverted for Shenk's personal gains. $1 million on online gambling, investments in a nuclear energy firm, and splurges on diamond, gold, and precious metals. Shenk funneled donations through various organizations worldwide, including entities in Singapore and Hong Kong, and U.S. companies like BCB International and Shankland LLC from 2010 to 2019. Yet, in a town far away in China, a glimmer of hope shone. A large truck rolled into a church courtyard, its back filled with boxes of Bibles. Children, elders, and families gathered, their faces lighting up as they received the books. These Bibles, symbols of faith and hope, were funded by the sale of Shenk's seized assets. Despite the deceit and betrayal, the Bibles reached those who yearned for them, proving that the spirit of the community remained resilient and their faith unshaken by the actions of one man. Jason Gerald Shenk's story teaches a crucial lesson about the blending of kindness with cautiousness. His tale illustrates the imperative of being mindful and thorough in scrutinizing matters, especially where our financial contributions are concerned. Even when our hearts are moved to support commendable causes, it's vital to interweave our benevolence with a wise approach. Employing wisdom doesn't dilute our kindness, but rather ensures that our goodwill genuinely reaches those it's intended for, protecting it from being misused or misdirected. Your enjoyment and engagement with our stories means the world to us here at Vice Confidential. If this case sparked your interest and you're eager to explore more intriguing narratives, please do click like and subscribe. Our channel is teeming with compelling stories that await your ears. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the other side.